Hey second graders, this video is going to teach you about reflexive pronouns. The goal by the end of the lesson is for you to be able to identify a reflexive pronoun in a sentence and use a reflexive pronoun in a sentence as well. Let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start today's lesson off with a riddle. So see if you can figure out what this riddle is describing. They're sometimes on a wall and sometimes on a shelf. And when you look at one, you always see yourself. What do you think this riddle is describing? Did you say a mirror? If so, you are correct. Now, when you look in a mirror, what do you see? I want you to write your answer down, or if there's an adult next to you, you can tell them yourself. What do you see when you look in a mirror? Did you say myself? Hopefully you did. So we're going to look at a few different words here. I need you to help me fill in the blank on these sentences. You can write these down on your paper. I see blank self. What letters do we need to put here? What word needs to go here to complete this word in blue? When I look in the mirror, I see blank self. Hopefully you put my. I see myself. What word should go in this blank? You see blank self. How could we complete that word? Did you say or write down your? Hopefully you did. The correct word here would be you see yourself. What about this one? How would we complete this word? We see blank selves. If you're looking in the mirror with your friend, you would say, we see ourselves. Here's another one for you. If two of your friends are looking in the mirror, they will see blank selves. They will see, did you say themselves? Hopefully you did. And the last one, everybody has a robot at home, right? So when your robot looks in the mirror, I almost gave it away. It sees itself. So all of those words we just made, all of those blue words, you can see them here. What do you notice about them? Take a second to look at these words in blue. What do you notice? Hopefully you notice that all of the words ended in either self or selves. And I hope you notice that because that is what our lesson is all about today. These words are called reflexive pronouns. Now the word reflexive, it sounds a little bit like reflection. We could see that it even starts the same way with the same letters here. Now a reflection is an image that bounces back to you. So when you look in the mirror, your reflection is an image that bounces back for you to see. A reflexive pronoun reflects back to the subject of a sentence or a clause, which is like part of a sentence. So it kind of bounces back to the subject of the sentence. Now let's look a little bit more at that because you might be confused at this point, but don't worry, we're going to clear it up a little bit. So a reflexive pronoun is always going to end in either self or selves. That makes it really easy to find a reflexive pronoun in a sentence. Okay, so you're looking for a word that ends in self or selves. Now remember from last week, a pronoun is a word that replaces a noun. So for example, instead of saying the teacher wrote on the board, you could say she wrote on the board. Okay, so that is a pronoun. A reflexive pronoun reflects back to the subject of a sentence. Now you might be wondering, What is the subject of a sentence, Miss Byrne? I can't remember learning that this year. Well, if we look at an example first of this being used in a sentence, right? We have the sentence, Amy sent an email to herself. We have to think about the subject. Who is this about? This sentence is about Amy, right? She's the subject. So the reflexive pronoun has to reflect back to Amy. So that would be herself. That's the reflexive pronoun that makes sense, right? Because our sentence is about Amy, who is a girl. So we use herself. Here's another example. We taught ourselves how to fly. Ask yourself, who is this sentence about? This is about we, right? These kids. So the reflexive pronoun ourselves reflects back on we. It's related to we. Now, a reflexive pronoun is used when the subject and the object of the sentence are the same person or thing. Let's break this down a little bit, okay? Every sentence has to have a subject and a verb. The verb is the action, what's being done. The subject is the who or the what, who is doing that action. Okay, so every sentence has to have those two things. Like this sentence, I see. It's just two words, but it's a complete sentence because we have our subject, I, and we have our verb, see. Now, some sentences can also have an object. An object is whoever or whatever receives the action. So if we added one word to this sentence, now we have an object. I see myself. Okay, myself is our reflexive pronoun. It's reflecting back on the subject, I. All right. Now, how do we find reflexive pronouns in a sentence? Well, one, we look for words ending with self or selves because it's always going to end with that. And a reflexive pronoun is always going to reflect back to the subject of the sentence. So it's going to have to match up. That makes sense, right? If we're talking about a boy, we wouldn't see the reflexive pronoun themselves because we're only talking about one boy and that wouldn't match and reflect right. So for example, in the sentence, I am proud of myself, the reflexive pronoun myself reflects back on the subject, I. James is proud of himself. We have the subject, James, and the reflexive pronoun, himself. Those match up, and the reflexive pronoun goes back and is connected to the subject, James. Okay, so reflexive pronouns can be singular. That means they're talking about only one person. That will end in self, herself, himself, myself, itself. We're talking about one thing or one person. Sometimes reflective pronouns can be plural and they'll end in selves if they're plural. Notice the F at the end changes to VES when we make it plural. Like in ourselves, yourselves, themselves. Okay? Now, join me in the hall of mirrors. So on your paper, I want you to write down when you see the words, each one that you think is a reflexive pronoun. Okay? So pause the video now so you can write down all of the words here that you believe are reflexive pronouns. When you think you're ready, you can play the video and we'll see if you're correct. Okay, so hopefully you have written down what you believe are all the reflexive pronouns. I'm going to go through and click on the words. If it gets a check mark, that means it should be on your list. If it gets an X, it should not be on your list because it's not a reflexive pronoun. We'll start here with myself. Hopefully you wrote that one down. The next word is themselves. That gets a check mark too. That should be on your list. Here we have seashell. And hopefully you didn't write that one down. The next word is she. That That's a pronoun, but not a reflexive pronoun. Hopefully you didn't get tricked by that. Here we have herself. That should be on your list. Our. Again, a pronoun, but not a reflexive pronoun. Himself. Yep, that should be there. Bookshelf. Nope, that word shelf isn't different from self. Okay, down here we have itself. Yep, that's a reflexive pronoun. Here's the word mine. Hopefully you didn't write that one down. And the last mirror says ourselves. And that has that special ending, selves. So hopefully you wrote that on your list. How'd you guys do? If you got them all, give yourself a pat on the back. Okay, so now let's do some practice finding the reflexive pronouns in these sentences. Obviously, we don't have whiteboards, or maybe you do, but I wouldn't be able to see it. So just write it on your piece of paper. If there's an adult that's sitting with you, you can talk to them about it too and tell them what you think the answer is. All right, let's get started. I taught myself how to ride a bike. Write down the reflexive pronoun in this in this sentence, sorry. I taught myself how to ride a bike. And if you need extra time, you can pause the video always after each sentence to give yourself enough time. The correct answer here was myself. Remember to look for that special ending of self or selves. The next sentence. Peter Jones taught himself how to juggle. What's the reflexive pronoun in this sentence? Hopefully you said himself. That reflexive pronoun is reflecting back on the subject, Peter Jones. The next one, she drew a picture of herself. What is the reflexive pronoun? She drew a picture of herself. Did you say herself? If you did, great job. Next up, the queen spends hours looking at herself in the mirror. What is the reflexive pronoun in this sentence? The answer is herself. All right, next up. I enjoyed myself at the school camp. I enjoyed myself at the school camp. Where is the reflexive pronoun in that sentence? There it is, myself. We enjoyed ourselves at the party. We enjoyed ourselves at the party. Which word is the reflexive pronoun? Ta-da! Ourselves is the reflexive pronoun in that sentence. Ben and Jen behaved themselves during lunch. Ben and Jen behaved themselves during lunch. Are you guys like Ben and Jen? What is the reflexive pronoun here? Themselves. We see that ending, selves. That's our clue. And the last one we're going to do, the tree fell down by itself. The tree fell down by itself. What's the reflexive pronoun? Hopefully you wrote down itself. All right, so take a look at yourself in the mirror. Give yourself a pat on the back or kiss your brain for doing an excellent job learning about reflexive pronouns. So now you should be ready to go ahead and take your exit ticket. So you can close out of the video and go to the link to take your exit ticket on reflexive pronouns. Good luck and thanks for watching. Bye.